Welcome to a Friday edition of the Common Sense Club and the Scott Hennen Show. Our next guest, Congressman Rick Berg, who is gunning to be Senator Rick Berg on a couple of important topics. Rick, how you doing?
Hey, Scott. I'm doing great.
Nice to have you on the program.
Happy to have me on.
Happy Friday to you. I know you're horribly frustrated over the inaction on the farm bill, so I thought we'd start there. Any break in the logjam there?
Oh, I tell you, that is so frustrating. I mean, no. I yesterday, of course, our push has been to get the farm bill voted on the floor of the House, and had 60 colleagues that joined with me pushing leadership to do that. It didn't happen. And so, yesterday there was a vote to adjourn, which is typically done this time of the year, and that vote failed. I voted against it along with many others because, this is one of those outstanding issues that needs to be dealt with. Instead of kicking the can, we need to roll up our sleeves and make a decision.
Now, one of the arguments that's been given for, on one hand, it's kicking the can. The other is that, hey, the votes aren't there. And I know, obviously, that's a function of leadership as well. But are you confident that if you got the vote as you want, that the votes would be there and it'd pass?
Well, Scott, I mean, this is what's frustrating. I mean, you bring a bill out, you put it on the floor, and you take a vote. If it doesn't pass, then you go back to committee, you figure out what needs to be done to change it, and you bring it back out and you vote on it again. I mean, we have to have a bill passed by the end of September. And so from my perspective, what works in North Dakota is we have this regular process where bills go from a committee, they go to the floor, they're voted on. And that's one of the things that's most frustrating for me is they haven't brought it to a floor. And, of course, that's what needs to happen. Get it in conference committee, and so the House and Senate can, figure out, what the final bill would look like.
What are they telling you when you say, I'm frustrated and I want to vote here? What is House leadership, your leadership, giving you in the way of answers here?
Well, I mean, there's been a lot of different positions, but I think, part of the position is, what you said, they're concerned about losing a vote on the floor of the House. Well, then if you don't think you can get the votes, you need to recraft the bill to make it work. Right now there's another tool in our tool chest. It's called the discharge petition, which means if you have 218 people in the House that sign a discharge petition, then the bill would automatically go to the floor of the House. And so, I'm working on that. Continuing to work with leadership. This is the one industry that's a shining light in our country is agriculture, creating jobs, creating, a lot of new revenue for the state, for the federal government. I mean, the last thing we want to do is put this cloud of uncertainty over agriculture, quite frankly, like government's done in almost every other industry with the regulations and the uncertainty in taxes. I mean, it's estate tax, Scott. If you want to go there, that's another thing that's got really under my skin.
Before we go there, I want to ask you about this D.C. abortion bill. Unbelievable, but current law in Washington, D.C. permits abortions under almost all circumstances. And obviously, Congress has final say over what happens. And I was thrilled to see you sponsor a piece of legislation that would have banned abortion in the District of Columbia after 20 weeks of pregnancy. Now, as I understand, it got a majority of the House votes of, 220 to 154, but did not have the votes it needs to become passed out. And there's some talk that they're going to add it to a bill over in the Senate.
I got a lot of disappointment this week as a co-sponsor of that legislation. Obviously, government's role should be to protect the unborn. It came out under suspension, and so what that means is you need a 2/3 vote for it to pass. I didn't get the 2/3, but like you said, it got a majority. So the bill's not dead; it's just kind of sitting there, so it can be brought up under regular order and passed for the simple majority. And so, that's, I think, part of what people are trying to do is figure out how best to make that happen. But, it's crazy the way things are set up here, certainly for Washington, D.C., and this is one thing that's obviously critical to me.
Yeah, and by the way, the National Right to Life Committee did score that, so if nothing else, and I hope it does get in it, and Senator Mike Lee is trying to put it on another piece of legislation over in the Senate, which would be great. But we at least know where these House members stand on it. And a few of them did vote, a few Democrats did vote for it. A handful of Republicans voted against it, but not enough votes to get it done. Okay, on the death tax, tell us a little bit about Well, first of all, the death tax and what that does to the family farm and small business is where we ought to start. I mean, that's
Scott. It's absolutely crazy. I mean, the one thing we know in North Dakota is we want to leave things better for our children and the next generation. I mean, every family farm. In fact, we had a deal last week where a fifth-generation family farmer, he goes, we fought through the Depression, we fought through droughts and floods and markets, but right now, President Obama, the Senate Democrats, and almost all the Republicans, or almost all the Democrats in the House, voted to tax estates at 55%. So everything over that first million would be taxed at 55%. I mean, what that means is you have according to USDA, the average farm is valued about $1.5 million, $300,000 in equipment and $1.2 in land. In order for a mom and dad to pass it on to their son and daughter, that son and daughter will have to come up with hundreds of thousands of dollars. They'll have to sell the equipment or sell part of the land to continue that family farm. I mean, it's absolutely crazy. It's nuts. But, that's the mentality out here. It's tax and spend.
Is this one of those cases that there's no chance you're going to go anywhere near trying to get this thing? I know there's legislation out there, and full repeal of the state tax is something that's been proposed, but no chance we get anywhere, any progress here until we have a different president, right?
Well, I mean, absolutely. We're not going to support that in the House. I don't support what the President and Harry Reid are proposing on the STEF tax, and so, I mean, this is going to be settled after the election, and hopefully we'll have the votes that understand how important small business and family farms are, so we can get our economy going again. I mean, it's crazy. 8.3%, unemployment again today. We have to remove the uncertainty and get our economy going.
Let me ask you, in the 90 seconds we have left here, for an update on the Senate race. There have been a number of partisan polls that have directed media reporting on this, the latest one being from I guess the Heitkamp camp that showed her with a 6-point lead over you. What do you make? I mean, is the media and others sort of taking the bait on these partisan polls?
Well, I'll tell you what, that last poll was kind of, that's the same group that predicted President Obama predicted Obama would win. And my understanding, the numbers and everything came from the Democrat Party. I tell you, when I'm out crisscrossing North Dakota, people are fired up, Scott. And we were in a parade, and people were getting out of their chairs, coming out and saying, we've got to win this election, that this is really about the future. I was having breakfast with my son at a restaurant, and this lady is kind of, busting tables, and she comes up to me and says, you know what, we have to win this. If we don't, I don't know what I'm going to do with this restaurant. This Obamacare and the regulation, the bureaucracy, and the taxes are really choking our economy. So I'm fired up about the support that I've gotten as I've been crisscrossing the state.
And not buying any partisan polls here, huh? Just trying to change the narrative, I think, is what's going on, and it's happening in the media, but not a sign of reality. A lot of that going on. By the way, ask Ted Cruz about the polls and the reality in Texas. Rick, good to talk to you. Rick Berg.